everybody, and welcome back to the show. This is episode 38 on the Strange Exchange. And today we got a very special episode because we're going to be talking about the wonderful cryptids. I know Rob loves them too as much as I do, so this is going to be a really fun one. So
Absolutely.
definitely listen to this one or come to your house and we'll stick Bigfoot on you.
Yeah, it's just a little introduction into the world of cryptids. This probably will not be the only episode we do on this because there's so many myths and creatures out there that we could almost have like a conversation every single one that has ever existed.
Could literally do an episode for each creature, so
Um,
yeah, this could get hairy.
but I guess we can start out with a lot of the common ones too. But before we get into that, I believe we have our wonderful
Uh,
quote that we have to get
I was
to.
gonna say before we get into Bigfoot's cabin here and go through and rummage through his belongings, the quote goes, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." It's by Marcus Aurelius. Aurelius. I
I
knew I was
feel
gonna
like
butcher that.
that's
I don't know
yeah.
how to say it. All right, guys, come on, give me a break. Come on, give me a break here.
We're
Yeah,
38 episodes in. You can't
Aurelius.
expect them to be, better for
That is
it.
that is a very difficult looking name.
um,
Thank you, Marcus, for giving us that quote. But yeah, cryptids. What do you know about them, Bobbert?
I could tell you this: a lot of them are hoaxes. I think. A lot of people kind of just make things up as they go, and a lot of them are part of
Absolutely.
the folklore, and you might read them in your books or see them on TV shows and movies. Obviously, like dragons. I think dragons have popped up in a lot of the medieval type of fan fiction. You see like I think Game of Thrones was kind of in that realm, and um, along with like obviously the Harry Potter films are a lot of mythological creatures and stuff in there too, and
Damn, that's
many
disappointing.
films. But like you said, Bigfoot, that's still something people truly think is out there. They are still hunting and trying to find him.
I think Bigfoot is the most probable, like Sasquatch, Bigfoot, all those kind of cryptids in that genre.
Yeah.
I think that is the most reasonable one that could exist. That's the one. Obviously, I still think aliens too, if you count those as cryptids too. Those are also
Technically, they
very
are. And
considered. Yep.
um,
Aliens and Bigfoot. I think those two are most likely. Although ocean's pretty big too.
yeah,
Pretty
that's
big.
the crazy thing about a lot of the waterborne cryptids. You don't know. Obviously, the lake monsters have been popping up. That's one of the more common ones, like the Loch Ness monster. Those giant like Hydra looking figures in the lakes. Those are the ones that people tend to notice. But lakes have been almost, for the most part, explored. A lot of them are pretty well understood, so it's a little tough to kind of continue that rumor. Where the ocean's like, hey, you have no clue. The ocean floor could be filled with all sorts of things, and we don't even know.
Lurking around there, swimming around,
So that's the beauty
looking
of
for
them.
some
I think
easy
along with
meals.
along with the Sasquatches, which by the way, there's not just Bigfoot. There's the Yeti. The Yeti is something that they believe exists in the Himalayas, in the mountain regions that people just can't really prove. They can't find a way to get enough evidence to prove that it's real, but people believe that they've seen them. And why not?
Yeah,
It's a mountainous
I
range where there's tons of
very
land.
treacherous. Yeah, hard
Yeah,
to hard to go through and navigate. And there's so much land like that that's so unique and mountainous, and
absolutely.
where we can't even walk and wander into because it's you'll fall or something or get lost, freeze to death, all those risks to be able to go find this creature. So yeah,
Yeah,
Yetis, Bigfoot, honestly, like I those are at the top for me, and aliens too. Like
yeah.
nothing else
Um,
comes close to that because there's really not. And the thing with like a lot of these other little creatures, like people see, like, oh, I seen this by like a railroad track or something, and I swear it's always there. Like there's this little monster that hangs out by my trash can. These little like amateur stories you get, like
Yeah,
that the little unique ones that aren't common. Those ones you're like, okay, this dude was just on mushrooms or he's just making stuff up trying to get attention.
absolutely. And that's the great thing about cryptozoology is it really comes down to people just exploring the idea, researching, and then beginning to develop a search party almost to go and seek out and try to get those sightings. Even though most sightings have been almost just by happen chance, at least that's what we believe. And the pictures and images we have seen have been grainy and not really like the clearest. Obviously, the Bigfoot footage we have seen, the videos, I'm sure everybody has seen it. The
Yep.
what they claim to be the Bigfoot walking through the woods, that's been disputed tremendously as a fake film, and I do believe it's probably not real. I think that one definitely looks more of a guy in a suit. But then there are the sightings like, hey, I've heard the noises, I've seen the tracks. There's a lot of crazy things, and ironically, a podcasting brethren, Joe Rogan, was one of the guys that went out and explored it. And he attempted to do it. I think he's still kind of on the fence about it. So that's kind of what makes it a little interesting is when you finally go out in those woods, um, which I think where are they saying it's mostly located? Like Montana, I think somewhere out there in the middle of nowhere.
Bigfoot?
Yeah, because he's out in like
Uh,
Montana, Idaho, like the Yellowstone
actually,
area.
you'd actually be really surprised. Like down in the south, most of it I think does come from like the northern areas of
Yeah,
the U.S. But yeah, like Montana, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, Minnesota, North Dakota,
that's like the
Wisconsin,
woody
Michigan.
regions, like even
Yep,
Canada.
California. I'm sure there's
Yeah,
tons of sightings.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Northern California, just
yeah, all
there's tons of
woods.
land. There's
But
tons of
pretty sure
land,
there's like mountains areas too, mountainous areas and that over there too.
and there's nothing saying that there's only one too. There could be multiple. You would think, but um, yeah, that's just one of the little pillars of cryptozoology or cryptids is Bigfoot and the Sasquatch. It's crazy because there's so many different uh, renditions, but one that's interesting and actually kind of applies to our neck of the woods. And I know you've heard about it and you know how spooky it looks, and that's the Wendigo, the Wendigo, or whatever
Wendigo, yeah.
the Wendigo, excuse me, Native
Yep.
American
That thing is
folklore.
freaky. That thing is, yeah. I that one, the only reason why I didn't choose it for something that I could see being very like probable compared to other ones is because it's like a hybrid of like a man, deer, and like something else,
Mhm.
like a werewolf or something. I have no idea. It's just all these things combined. It's like, all right. That one just seems like someone's imagination just went wild. They're like, man, I swear I seen this
Yeah.
deer man creature running through the woods, and it could, I don't know, it could have been a werewolf too. I swear it was right out here. Like, you hear all these backwoods stories. Like, it just that
Well,
one seems like a bunch of
I
people
th-
just trying to get
I think
attention.
the idea behind it was that it was something that could ultimately take the form of a human and just blend into kind of the everyday life. But then when the eyeballs were looking elsewhere, it became more of a problem and it became that cannibal of sorts, and that evil spirit that people obviously of the First Nations talk about up in the
Yep.
Great Plains area, um, all the way over to like if you go to Lake Superior and go west, all the native tribes along that stretch into like North Dakota, South Dakota, um, and actually the word isn't a Ojibwe word, which Ojibwe happens to be a very popular tribe in the state of Minnesota. So obviously this is something a little bit closer, but Yeah, they believe it's something that just takes on the form
Like,
rather than
isn't
actually
it
being
like
already
demon,
birthed.
like devil human, or like demon or something? Isn't that what Wendigo is? Like, or like evil spirit? I swear it was
Yeah,
something like that.
the translation obviously is
Oh,
a little tough because it's different for everybody. Um, because obviously different tribes will say it in a different way. Um, some believe it has the attachment to the word owl in the native terms,
uh,
which an owl is a nocturnal creature. You know, they
yep.
prey on the night. Like that's what they do. Not necessarily preying on humans, but they're preying on
Oh, that would suck.
smaller figures,
Big
like
ass
rats
owls just flying
and
around,
different
swooping you up
animals
in
and
the woods.
creatures. But that's where they're coming from. I think in a lot of ways they look at it as a nocturnal creature because that's when the sightings have happened. Um, and they compare it to werewolves. They they compare the Wendigo to just different hybrids. Obviously, it has antlers and things like that. But
Yep.
is it real? Probably not. But it's
It's too
also probably
unique. It's
yeah.
way too unique. It's like I know that's kind of weird. That's kind of like a weird thing to say because there's a lot of unique creatures on this planet. But that thing is like an RPG monster, like unique, like out of a video game. It's too
Absolutely.
way too fairy tale. I think it's just,
I
but you
think the
never know, man.
characteristics are really pointed out. I guess that's the best way. It's like they're specific.
Yeah, and that thing is big too. I mean, so is Bigfoot, but I think Bigfoot a little bit better. You know, it probably has antlers, the Wendigo, and
Yeah.
it really sticks out. If you've seen something like that, you'd be like, oh, look at that. It's just, it could be a bear standing on its hind legs, like as if
Hmm.
it was Bigfoot. The bear
Or
and Bigfoot look a lot alike.
technically, you have like deer tend to sometimes they can stand on their hind legs well. They've
Oh
done
yeah,
it in
just
terms of
scratching a
those
tree or something, or trying to
like an
get
attack
food.
position. So that
Yep.
could be a case too. But I don't know. This is a tough one for me.
Yep.
Um, Another creature that is similar to it, that people actually a town has dedicated its town to this existence, is Mothman.
Oh man, that one. That's a weird one.
In Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It's now a tourist destination built on the Mothman. I mean, it is crazy. This thing is huge there. They built statues of it. They have
Yeah, they got metal growth
buildings.
statues of it. It's like
Yeah.
art everywhere of it.
Um, this one, it's a little tough because the figure itself seems like way ridiculous. But could it be possible? Could it
I
very
just
well
found a
be possible?
picture of. I don't know this guy. I'm gonna say his name. I've never even heard of this guy. Anyway, Senator Joe Manchin.
Okay.
I don't know how to say that. He's standing in front of it. I'll put it in our thumbnail and stuff. But yeah, it
In
looks
front of the
funny.
statue?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
actually cool looking, kind of funny looking too. It's actually a really cool statue. Actually, it's very, very cool.
I say it could be real. I think it's the thing about your belief
Oh,
is
any
that
of these things
it could be real.
prove it. Like
Mhm.
we don't know.
But
We
I think
have
the
no
Mothman
idea.
is cool. I think that's a very, very interesting
That's
cryptid.
cool.
um,
Yeah, we should have like dude. We should do like a little kind of like what we did with the cereal with
yeah,
each
just
kind of
rank them
yeah, like rank
based
them
on
like which one.
our enjoyment. Yeah.
Or
Um,
yeah, I mean, or they could like have them kind of have a face off, like a cryptid face off or something, like which one, which one people think would win. And we could have people have the viewers
yeah.
vote or something like that, and it'd be pretty cool.
Um, Another creature that obviously has been popularized in a lot of ways. And this one, it comes back to the ocean because, like we just talked about, the ocean is incredible
Hides
and
a lot
we
of
don't
things.
know. Is a giant octopus, better known as the Kraken.
Oh, the Kraken, Kraken's really cool. I like the
Is
Kraken.
Do you believe that that could be another potential real thing?
I guess it comes down to size. Obviously, the ocean does have a lot of large creatures: blue whales, humpback whales, sperm whales,
Right.
giant squids, orcas. Um, I think there's pretty big crabs and jellyfish down there as well. Um, what else? I
Hmm.
mean, sharks.
Well,
You know,
these
you
things
name it.
they're explaining that in folklore they've taken down ships, like huge ships, and they almost overtake the ship its whole
Hmm.
size. So that's how big these things are. I mean, they're not
Yeah, this
small,
this
but
is uh this is another one where it's like they're hidden too. So, because like the giant, it took a long time to like
yeah.
discover the giant squid, and like people always say, like we've barely even tapped into the ocean. Like we just haven't discovered everything that we possibly can. The possibilities are
Hmm.
unlimited.
Do you think maybe the sightings of the giant squid are basically like an idea behind it? Is it spawning more of like, okay, it's just a giant squid and maybe the stories are fake, or is it really something that could have been a possibility back in time? Obviously, when you think of like
Could have been
dinosaurs,
yeah, it
like
could
that
have very
time.
well been. It could be extinct. Like it could be an extinct creature. Like
Yeah.
it's not around anymore. It died off. Maybe like creatures during its time killed it off or something. Maybe whales ate them all or something. Like you never know. It just depends.
It's
I
just
guess it depends how big if they did exist and how big they were.
it's just crazy to me to think that back in that time, like the 1700s, 1800s, where a lot of these started to come about, like what do you think is going through people's minds? Because no internet, there's no YouTube, there's no TV, there's nothing. At that point,
Uh,
everybody's got to believe in something, believe something best. So, is it safe to say maybe some of these things are real and we're just overlooking because of the timing? I mean,
I yeah, I think people just react to it with raw emotion and stuff, and that obviously there was no cameras or anything, and people just described what they seen as best as they could, and just for other people seen and tried to document it and stuff. I think like if the obviously I don't think it's like there was ever a cracking like on Pirates of the Caribbean.
hmm.
Caribbean, I think, is actually how they say it, Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they actually say that title that way. Anyways, yeah, I don't think they were that big, but I think they were probably pretty big enough to like scare people and
Right.
it's put fear in people. Is like giant squids and octopuses and stuff. You see them kind of swimming around. Um, but usually like octopuses and squids don't really come up that far, like to the surface where like our boats are. So it's a tough color, but maybe they've seen a dead or something floating.
Yeah.
Like seen it kind of like come towards them, maybe like um a high something bring us to something like, oh, giant monster, Kraken, Kraken. They just came up with their own word name for it, like Kraken, the cracker of ships or something like that. Um, yeah, I think it stems from like we heard from other people, and they just like
Okay.
because like this whole thing, this whole enigma, people are like fearful of it because it's like don't go out at night, don't go out with your boats and your little paddle boats. The Kraken will get your ship or your boat, and then it'll take you down to the deep dark depths. So I think that fear like makes the whole subject of these monsters like a lot greater than just like somebody just saying it.
But that's what kind of makes it fun, though, I think, in a lot of ways, is the
Absolutely.
idea behind it. Not necessarily fun for those that have supposed sightings, but rather for us to think the possibility is there. I don't think these days much is being seen, um, because obviously there's still some creatures that we could go into in the waters, but
Oh,
like,
sure. There's so many creatures in the water.
but maybe not necessarily these things being real, but something similar, maybe a subspecies that look exactly like the tail could be like obviously with the giant squids that you know that's real. That's a real thing. Um, where the Kraken, like they're saying it's just an octopus that's just massive, and like you said, it could have been just a happen chance. The thing is floating over, and they're getting a little fearsome and worried, and they don't know what's going on. Yeah, I
Yep.
truly believe that could be real. I'm not gonna say the Kraken's real, but I think the potential's there.
Yep.
Um, and a lot of that too, because I mean, there's cryptids and stuff that I think could be more proven, like ghosts and
Yeah.
supposedly like
Oh
shadow
yeah.
people, things like that, things that people have seen.
Ghosts. I personally believe in ghosts just because um there's so I think there's so many little stories for ghosts and people's experiences. So I think those are the I think those do exist. Like I really
Yep.
do. There's just too many, and the thing is, there's like actual recordings of things happening. That's like, okay, that was not
Yeah.
actually a person moving. That wasn't a person. Like that was a weird shadowy figure moving fast. That was a little um foggy looking entity. Like there's so many different
Yeah.
like forms and like for like and people actually catch this stuff with their iPhones and stuff like versus
Yeah,
like
there's
Bigfoot. It's always freaking there's recording it with like a like
it's
a Nintendo
grainy.
DS or something like a can like
Or you can
it's
go on
just
YouTube right
terrible.
now and you're gonna find videos that almost seem just too real. Like, it gets to that. And that's the great thing about
Yep.
ghosts is the
There's
technology we
so
have. We can catch
much.
it.
Yep. There's so much videos of things like and sounds, everything. Like and I think if you ask the average person, somebody's gonna have some kind of weird otherworldly worldly experience with any
Yep.
kind of spirit, ghost, or invisible entity that's making noise or moving, or you can feel its presence. Like, yeah, I'm like pretty much 100% convinced that those exist because I have had experiences that were
Mhm.
pretty creepy, and it definitely moved me more towards believing.
Well, and that's the great thing about that. I think a lot of people have had experiences that almost can confirm it because of like everything else, the sightings are kind of far and few between. Or you look at like ghosts, it's almost everyone at some point, I think, is going to experience something. Unless you really are just against believing it 100%, you probably are going to blank it out of your entire mind. But if you
Yep,
have at least even the sliver of hope and belief that this thing exists, you might experience something. And that's um,
yep,
pretty much everybody I talk to has had an experience with
some
a
kind of
paranormal
ghost
entity.
story. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's not really like super negative. It's always been like, yeah, but um, negative ones I think people kind of lean more towards and look at like, oh, is there something more to that? Is there like with idea like the demons and I guess the I don't know how would you explain like ghouls. Ghouls
yeah,
technically
ghouls.
are more of a darker figure. Their purpose is negative, where ghosts can almost be anything, or like shadow people, where they're more of a horrifying sight.
I
And
I could I partly I partially believe in chat people. That I guess it depends on like what someone's definition of that is. Like, because technically, like to me, a shadow person is like a form of a ghost, like a paranormal entity.
yeah, I think it's just more of
It's
like a
like a
quick
sub.
sighting rather than something that's consistent. It's just like there, and then it's gone.
Yeah, but
Like
there's
it just
everything
pops up.
casts shadows though, so that like in the day, like if you've seen a shadow moving, like okay, oh, it's a shadow person. I'm getting attacked
Hmm.
by a shadow person. Someone help me. It's different to me. It there's just so many shadows in the day. It's hard to like really have that be more convincing. And that's such a new thing too. Shadow people. Like I don't know exactly when that became a thing, like known like worldwide and stuff. But ghosts have been around since who knows when. Like those have
Hmm.
always been a thing. Like shadow people I feel like is so recent, and people just gave like ghosts a
Yeah.
sub name, and they're like,
Well, the shadow
shadow
people
moved.
they're more easy to spot out in the
Yep.
blind eye, but it's almost like peripheral vision. Like you just see it.
Yeah, it's always at the corners. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
hear people say. It's always the corner
Or a ghost
around the
is more of like has like that energy that you kind of can feel, and then cameras catch them, but it's like the shadow people are almost difficult to catch on camera. Although there's a few videos and I've seen them. But again, they could be up for debate.
Yep.
And then it's just the corner of your eye. It's like, what was that? Like if you're walking in, let's say like your house at night, people explain like, hey, I see the thing walking past the hallway or whatever, and they get a little freaked out. But it could be anything, and that's
Yeah,
the crazy
exactly.
thing. So that's where I think it's more recent, kind of like the black stickmen, like we were talking about before the show, where people are now explaining that that's something they see, a two-dimensional figure that they have no explanation for. It has no motive
The
or
stick people thing.
like movement. Yeah, that to me is a
That
little far-fetched, but it probably is in the same realm as shadow people. I think it has more of
absolutely.
a same concept.
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like the shadow people thing, and um that all that stuff definitely is in the same genre. Like it's
Mhm.
just, oh yeah, it's thinner this time. Like it's still it's probably a ghost, or
Yeah.
I just my mind's playing a trick on me, or there's a hair on my eyeball. With, yeah,
Yeah,
the
that's
sightings have been in a lot of different places, like Germany,
yeah.
Japan, China, pretty sure Korea, like a couple other places.
Mhm.
Also, Jap Japanese people always have the freakiest cryptids too. By the way, I don't know if you any urban
I've
legends and
looked it
stuff.
up. Yeah,
We should we should definitely do another episode
I think
on
you could
urban
split the
legends.
episodes up
Yep.
in terms of like region, because like Europe is such an old region. There's so much history and so much that has gone on. Like
Oh
leprechauns.
yeah,
I know
yeah.
leprechauns are funny to think about, but at some point or
Leprechauns,
another, people believe
trolls,
that they're real.
dwarves,
Yeah. Trolls,
hobbits,
vampires, people believe are real. Um,
werewolves.
gargoyles,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
mermaids, people still, it's not the mermaids you see in the movies where
Yeah,
like,
we're not talking
where they're supposed to be
Little
beautiful
Mermaids.
creatures. We're talking mermaids that bring you to your
Eat
death.
people.
Like
Eat you.
I think it was in the book The Odyssey, which is a fiction book, but they're called like sirens, and what they do is they're luring you in, and then you're
Yep.
dead. Like it's an iceberg thing, it just knocks you down, um, and that's I mean, I think every region has their little monsters and creatures, and that's the beauty of cryptozoology. Anything can happen, and we're just we're only
And
touching the
goes.
surface of this. We're not even getting deep into it, man. There's some crazy things that are out
Yep.
there, including one I've never heard of, which is the Minnesota Dog Man. I've never heard of it.
I
Believe it or
remember.
not, it's
Yeah,
something
I remember hearing
really
about that
believe
one.
in. It's crazy. But yeah, as we go
Was
on, we'll get more into it because this is a topic that I think everybody could find interest in, and we'll have to
yeah,
separate this up a little bit.
cryptids all the way, man. It's always everyone's got some kind of story, or they've heard a story
Absolutely.
from somebody they know. It's so cool to hear stuff, and whether it's true or not, it will always be fun to talk about.
Yeah. And if there's any specific cryptids, our audience, I say that in a very high tone, wants us to potentially talk about, please feel free to comment or whatever. Maybe we'll
Let us
touch
know
base.
for sure.
I will not talk about Krampus. I refuse.
Krampus? Oh, come
I'm
on.
not talking about
No,
the
I
evil
mean,
Santa.
I mean that's cool and all, but yeah, no, I'd rather talk about other creatures. That's
I
more
want to
of
talk
like
about
a
gnomes
yeah,
and
gnomes. Oh,
centaurs.
those are real, man. They'll get you. They're in your
But
garden right
anyway,
now.
um, I think that's going to cover at least the introduction here. We will continue to
Introduction
move
to
further, but
cryptids.
again, stay tuned. There's going to be more cryptids. Strange is getting a little more strange as we discuss further
Yep.
cryptids.
Creatures.